we shall start with the first topic of the day. Thought we'd dive into this one. I wonder if No Time to Die is going to be the movie that carries the show now in 2021, because last year Tenet got us through a plethora of topics last year. Before we had even seen it, it was just such a talking point. It was the movie to revive theaters. So why not talk about No Time to Die? None of us have seen it, and none of us are going to see it for at least a little while longer. Remember when this was supposed to come out in November 2019? Pepperidge Farm remembers. What about
Oh, even
November
April 2019, actually.
April 2019. Yes, even before then. It was April, then it was November 2019, then it was November 25th, then it was April 2nd, and now we have to wait until October 8th of this year to see No Time to Die. And it has been a roller coaster with this. This was one of the movies too. I think the first movie to be delayed in lieu of the pandemic before it was even really a talking point, COVID-19 in America. I remember in early March, they delayed it because of the COVID-19 outbreak in China, obviously the origin of the virus. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, I remember like it was that, and then it was the night of the Jazz Thunder game that got delayed or got postponed because of Rudy Gobert testing positive. That's when it like clicked in my mind. I'm like, this is going to be a goddamn issue, is it not? And sure enough,
and here we are.
Yes. And now we're going to have to wait till October 8th to see No Time to Die. This is a $250 million movie, accruing interest by each passing day it is not released, with another 125 million at least baked into marketing. So my guess is this thing's going to have to make about 500 million to break even. And it would have done that probably no problem had the world remained normal and this came out in April or November of 2019, whenever it may have been released. But it is one of the most expensive movies ever made, fun fact. And it is also Daniel Craig's final Bond movie. Now, I'm just going to say right off the bat, I'm not a very big Bond fan. I trust my two co-hosts have far more knowledge of Bond than I ever have or did. Never been a big James Bond fan to begin with. Just never been my cup of tea per se. But No Time to Die is a significant movie for all the reasons I just listed. And rather than talk about the fact that it was delayed and when are theaters going to be open and when are we going to get this godforsaken vaccine and whatever the case may be, MGM has a big decision to make, and clearly they were considering other options than to release this in theaters. It was reported that back in October that MGM might sell it to Netflix or Apple for an upwards of $600 million. Again, that's got to be around the break-even point for this movie. That's kind of where I'm getting that assessment from. Well, I'm going to turn this over before I really give my opinion, since I just talked for the last few minutes. I'm going to throw it over to you two. What should MGM do? Should they continue delaying this movie until theater going is back at some semblance of normal, or at least until theaters across the country are indeed open again? Or should they try and release this onto a streaming service for an added fee, or if it's going to go to Netflix, it's probably just going to be accessible to watch with a subscription, which is why the asking price is high. So I'll start with you, Joe. Try to alleviate your headache talking about No Time to Die. What should MGM do with this?
If you would have asked me before the whole big HBO Max deal that happened recently, where we're getting a lot of the same movies that are being released the same day in theaters also coming to Max, I would have said, man, James Bond should come to a streaming service because, it gives it a perfect window to not have any competition, not have any streaming competition out there, and doesn't have to worry about the packed summer blockbuster that it might be going into if it keeps delaying, or end of the year blockbuster. With Warner Brothers using 14 of their movies, and their big ones too, The Matrix, Suicide Squad, and Dune, which were all slated for the last half of the year, I think now at this point it's you might as well just wait, and just because now that's one whole studio, you do not have to worry about their competition now. And I know MGM wants to make money, and if you want to make money, you would probably hope that if the vaccine works as good as it does and people are eager to get back out there and you want to keep this in the fall, or even if you want to do 2022 April where it's been a long enough time and like things are cooled down and theaters you can go there safely and everything. I think you can make that 500 million you're making. I don't know if you'll get more than that, but I think you could probably get as close as you can to it, more than you probably can with either paid pay-per-view or possibly a streaming deal. Because at this point, it's just like I'm trying to think out of all the movies that were supposed to come out in 2020 now, what do we have left? We have Black Widow, Fast and Furious, No Time to Die, and it's just like all the other ones that are coming to my mind are much smaller films or just small like or just horror films, like The Quiet Place, um, the new Edgar Wright film, something Soho, I forgot the name of it, and then and then a new Wes Anderson film. It's like that's all that's on my plate right now that like I can remember that was supposed to come out in 2020. In terms of big movies and even small movies, because everything else was Warner Brothers, Godzilla vs Kong, Dune, The Suicide Squad, and like the Batman is now 2022 because they pushed that back.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Candyman's another one, but that's a smaller one.
Yeah, that's a horror film. It's like in terms of like that big blockbuster, the things that are actually going to take away people's attention from you. It's like the only ones I can think of is the Fast and Furious because it's an action franchise, and Black Widow because it's a comic book movie and also kind of a spy thriller as well. So it's like at this point, it's like you don't have that much competition going out there anymore, in my opinion. I think you can. I think you can actually stick it out and just wait and make your money back. I think it's the better solution. I know people want to see this movie now, but guys, anybody who's just like my dad asks me almost like every week when we're doing this show, he's like, "Did you find anything out about James Bond?" I'm like, "No, it's still not happening," because he's a big Bond fan. He gave it to me. I've seen all of them now because during the pandemic I just streamed them all. So yeah, I've been dying to see this too. But with that HBO deal, there's plenty to come out still on streaming services, and then we have stuff on Netflix that's coming out this year that Netflix bought, similar to that one romance movie, the rom-com that Dom put on his worst of list last year, The Lovebirds. Yeah, like where like it was a film that's supposed to come out, but now like those kind of films, a lot of studios are like, just screw it, sell. We'll make the money off of that. So for me, I think they should stick it out. I think that would be fine.
Yeah, I gotta echo those sentiments.
Over to you.
I gotta echo those sentiments as well. Real quick, the Edgar Wright movie you're thinking about is Last Night in Soho, which is supposed to be a psychological horror film. So that sounds sick. Sorry, tangent. But yeah, if the choice is between release on streaming soon or release in theaters later, so release in theaters now is off the table because that would get people hurt. No Time to Die. Don't freaking die on me. But yeah. I would have to agree that it would have to be later, and for much of the same reasons Joe stated. I'm going to approach it also from a different angle, which is that MGM Studios, which is the parent production company of James Bond, we had that news towards the end of towards the end of December. December 22nd is this article from The Guardian. Hollywood studio MGM puts itself up for sale at $5 billion. Big price, but for streaming wars, they got a big library, and the streaming platforms are vying for access to that content. So how that plays into No Time to Die, it'll be interesting because if they do stream sooner, who is going to host it? Now, to my recollection, MGM doesn't have its own. It's not like Paramount Plus or anything where MGM has any kind of streaming service. Is that correct? They would have to find a distributor for that.
That's why like Apple TV and Netflix were like the biggest ones, because it's like Apple's got the money and Netflix has been in the game the longest.
I think I remember now Apple was like purportedly looking like a leader or contender to buy MGM, or at least that was what the rumor was. I don't know where that is now. But we will see if they will make their money off of that, and then maybe they're looking to sell. Because according to the Guardian article, MGM have been looking to sell not just recently, but for the last several years. So I don't know where that is big picture. I don't know. But if they release in theaters later, yeah, you're just wait until you get that normal money back, particularly if you do find that sweet spot window where the vaccine is in full force, things go according to plan, and people are out on the streets dancing and hugging each other again. Kind of, maybe that won't happen, but like, you know what I mean? The jubilation, the refreshingness of people coming out into the world again because things are safe when things are safe. You can make some big bank off of that. And yeah, James Bond will be what Tenet tried to be in the middle of the mess to begin with. So I'm with it.
And Tenet
yeah,
tried being a James Bond film, so let the actual real James Bond film come out.
And Joe actually had probably my leading point over here in that you've waited so long and there's not a lot left in terms of blockbusters from 2020 that have not been released. And I think the other thing too, I think there's a real concern, and this is why MGM didn't pull the trigger yet on selling it. I think there's a real concern for brand viability here. Now, I'm not going to say that if No Time to Die gets released on Netflix that it's going to kill the Bond franchise, but think about it this way though. There's an optics game at play here. If this next Bond movie comes to Netflix, and this is the last Daniel Craig movie, so it's kind of the end of an era to begin with. And I don't know who they've tabbed, if they've tabbed really anybody to play Bond in the next, I don't think they have, for the next, legion of movies, whatever the hell. But the other thing is that you get this one coming to Netflix, it sort of diminishes it in the eyes of the consumer then. If, like, you release the one on Netflix and then the next one right after everybody for the last 2 years has gotten comfortable watching new movies at home, you're going to expect them to come to theaters and pay, a premium to see the next Bond movie. I think that's tricky. And some people might roll their eyes at that, but I do think that that is a big concern too. I think if there's going to be another SpongeBob movie after this third one, whenever it comes out to Paramount Plus.
Oh, that's right.
I think if there's going to be a fourth SpongeBob movie and they're going to try to release it theatrically, I don't think that's going to do as well as they project. Now, that's a lot of what ifs. They haven't even greenlit a fourth movie yet. But that's another thing, though, I think is going to be something to watch because you just let the last one go on streaming. Are you going to expect the family now to come out after post-pandemic and come to the theater? So I think there's a real big concern for brand viability. And we've also talked about this briefly on the show. I almost think this could be its own kind of subjective segment. But it's so easy for stuff to get lost in the streaming shuffle these days. And I've talked to you guys privately kind of about this too. I think one of the most disappointing things I want to say, like, speaking in the realm of cinema about this pandemic, there have been a litany of other atrocities and sadness and despair throughout this pandemic. Confining it to the film industry, however, I will say this. I think one of the most upsetting things is that there have been a lot of great movies to come to streaming services, and the ease of access is just unprecedented. We've never had this before. But I think the disappointing part about it, though, is that stuff just seems to get lost and forgotten a lot quicker than it ever did. Like, you look at a movie like Bad Education or something that was on HBO came out on HBO last year, or even something like Borat. Borat just came out 3 months ago. Nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. It's in and
Those
out.
Those Borat jokes lasted for a decade when that first movie came out, and now it's nothing.
It's nothing. Like, and it's disheartening to say the least. I even feel like Wonder Woman faded a lot quicker than I expected. The only one that I can see having staying power that I've seen in the last, and I think it's because it's a kids movie. I've seen people talk about Soul even to this day.
I think it's that and like. It's that and like Disney Plus didn't have anything on its catalog compared to like all those other movies we listed. Their catalog has so much stuff that like it gets lost. While like Disney Plus, it's like Soul is probably the best thing to come out in terms of movies on Disney Plus. Like that's their best thing they've had released on there in terms of original films or just it just comes out on there like that one did compared to Mulan and who knows about Raya and the Last Dragon.
But stuff just gets lost in this binge watch culture now more than it ever has. And it's sad. And that's one thing as somebody like me who loves to talk about movies. And I get that I watch like 5 films a week and review 30 films a month. I get it. So I'm like, I'm hard to talk about somebody about to critique binge watch culture. But it's remiss to see a lot of great movies kind of be talking points for a couple days and then completely fade. Hell, does anybody even remember Mank, the movie that came on Netflix? I know as niche as that movie was, but that's another disappointing facet about this that I think MGM is aware of, I would assume. And then also, too, you release it on streaming, you're an immediate victim of piracy because now you can it's all digital. You can rip the 1080p quality, put it on one of those piracy thing, 1, 2, 3 movies or something, whatever it's called, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. You put it on one of those. What are you talking about? You put it on one of those sites or one of those piracy sites. It's not like the camcorder in the theater where it's still harder and difficult to pirate movies when they're released theatrically first. You put something on Disney Plus or whatever, it immediately gets ripped. So I think that brand viability is a huge topic of discussion in the MGM boardrooms. And that's why I'm saying, especially now with how deep we are into this and the vaccine rollout is happening, albeit at a slower pace because welcome to America. But at the same time, I think you've made it this far. And this is a guaranteed hit. This is a guaranteed hit in at least a decent climate, in at least a decent public climate. So I think I don't see this movie coming out in 2021 though. I will end with that.
Film royalty, that James Bond. It's amazing.
And I'd rather have the future of cinema in the hands of Bond than in the hands of a convoluted 3-hour, sci-fi hodgepodge, whatever the hell, but I don't want to go down that road.